Right now, coronavirus is the #1 cause of death in America on a day-by-day basis, but that won't last very long because it's going to peak and fall. But the economic impacts are going to last for much longer. However, coronavirus is not really the cause of all the economic impacts. It's just the pin that's breaking the bubble of a system that was structured to collapse sooner or later. That's the analysis of Peter Schiff, who's our guest for this segment and the next segment. We're going to welcome Peter Schiff to the show here, and no one has been more correct than Peter Schiff about everything that was going to happen. And we're going to ask him for his analysis of what happens next. So welcome to the show, Peter. It's great to have you on.
Here. Thanks for having me.
All right, Peter. Hey, it's great to see you there. Are you in Puerto Rico right now? Is that where you're joining us from?
I am. And, you know, the air conditioner is broken here in my studio. So if I start to sweat a little bit, it's not because I have the coronavirus. You know, there's nobody here to fix it because it's not, I guess they don't consider air conditioner repairmen essential. So we don't.
Well, right. So you've put out a lot of great podcasts recently. I'm a listener. I'm a fan of your work as well, which is one reason why I wanted to have you on. Can you explain to people why the coronavirus is not really the cause of all this economic implosion that we're seeing? It's just the initiator of it. But this was going to happen one way or another. Can you give us an overview of that, please?
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't want to dismiss the coronavirus as being a problem. It's clearly a problem, and even a healthy economy would have to deal with it. Now, you can debate whether or not the response is appropriate, whether or not we're going over the top as far as the self-isolation and the lockdowns and all that stuff. I'm not even talking about that. What I want to talk about is what the government is doing as far as the bailouts and the stimulus, the trillions and trillions of dollars that is being thrown at the problem and that is being created out of thin air by the Federal Reserve, which is, you know, buying up everything and flooding the economy with newly created money. This is going to do far more damage than the coronavirus to the economy. I mean, the government's cure is far worse than this disease. But what people are missing is that the coronavirus, at best, is a pin that pricked a bubble that was looking for a pin anyway. It would have found one. If it wasn't the coronavirus, it would have been something else. In fact, I think the air already started to seep out of that bubble. That was why the Fed had started cutting rates last year. That's why the Fed had quietly gone back to quantitative easing without admitting that it was doing it, was because the air was leaking out. But this is another financial crisis. When you hear people talk about it's not a financial crisis, of course it's a financial crisis. 2008 was a financial crisis, but it didn't start as a financial crisis. It was a real estate crisis. It was a decline in real estate prices. But the problem was the people who bought real estate borrowed money. And when the real estate went down, they didn't repay their loans. And that's what made it a financial crisis. Well, the coronavirus may be a health crisis, but when businesses are shut down and they have no revenues and they have a lot of debt, they can't pay their bills. So that's why it's another financial crisis. And the problem is we were a highly leveraged economy. Everybody had borrowed money. Corporations had borrowed money. State and local governments had borrowed money. The federal government, individuals with record student loans, credit card debt, auto debt. Nobody had saved anything for a rainy day. Well, take a look outside. It's not only raining, it is pouring, and we got nothing. And we think, Peter, well, we could just print money.
Well, yeah, that's my question. How far is the Fed going to take this? I mean, they've already printed trillions of dollars in money. They're going to own a significant portion of our economy. They're buying corporate bonds. They're buying real estate loans. I mean, they're going to be buying just stocks, I guess. And where does this end, if ever? They're just going to try to reinflate this to the point of oblivion? Or where does it end?
Well, yeah, look, they have a false sense of complacency because they believe that this strategy worked when they did it after the '08 crisis. Now, it only appears to have worked because they were able to inflate a bigger bubble than the one that popped. But it won't happen this time. There's no way they're going to reflate the bubble. And the problem is that what they're doing now is on an order of magnitude greater than what they did in '08. I mean, they're not just bailing out banks and, the GSEs, Fannie and Freddie. They're bailing out many different industries simultaneously, and state and local governments and the federal government and individuals. In fact, now they are injecting the inflation directly into the economy by sending out all these checks to individuals, to small business owners. So this is, QE for the people, but it's going to backfire in an even bigger way, because instead of pushing up stock prices, it's going to push up consumer prices. And everybody should be asking this question, and they're not. Who is going to pay for all of this? We're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars to bail out everybody, and now they want to spend trillions more on infrastructure. Where is the money coming from? Who is going to pay for it? Now, people think, oh, the Fed is just going to print it. Well, if the Fed could just print money and it cost us nothing, then why did we wait for the coronavirus? Why haven't we been doing this all along? I mean, why didn't we just have everything we wanted, just getting it from the Fed? Because people are going to find out that the most expensive way to pay for government is to print the money. Because we have to pay for government. It's not free. And either the government takes our money or the government takes our purchasing power. And that's what they're doing now. By printing money and spending it into circulation, they are destroying the value of the money that's already out there. So the money that people have saved in their retirement.
Yeah, I'm sorry, a little bit of a lag time between us, but doesn't this also bring up the question, why are we ever paying taxes to the federal government if they can just create all this money anyway and claim that there's no cost to it? Why are we sending checks to D.C. every April?
Well, that's my point, because you have to pay for government. And if we don't pay for it with taxation, we pay through it through inflation. The government either takes our money or they take our purchasing power. But the most expensive way to pay for government is the way they're doing it now, through inflation. And so every American who has savings, who has money in a retirement account, or even earns wages, is going to be stuck with the bill for the bailouts and the stimulus, because everybody's savings and income is going to lose value. The cost of living is going to go way up, right? It's massive inflation. It might even be hyperinflation. I mean, sure, people could say, but airline tickets are going down. Okay, because nobody's flying. What difference does it make what it costs to fly in an airplane if you're not flying? Believe me, if people wanted to fly, the price would go back up. The cost
Peter, we're
of the things that we are buying.
We're taking a quick break here, Peter. Sorry to interrupt. We're taking a quick break. We'll be right back with another segment with Peter Schiff, folks, here. A very important interview. We're going to talk about the misallocation of resources and how we can have a recovery from this economic episode. How do we have a recovery when the government is paying people to sit at home and not work and collect government checks? We'll get that question answered and much more with Peter Schiff straight ahead. Stay with us here on the Alex Jones Show. We'll be right back. All right, we're continuing our interview today on the economics of the coronavirus pandemic with Peter Schiff from schiffgold.com. He's, of course, the founder of Euro Pacific Capital. And in fact, Peter, I want to ask you a couple of questions. But first, what's the best way that people can follow your work on YouTube or elsewhere? What's the best channel?
Well, my YouTube channel is Schiff Report, and schiffradio.com is, I do my podcast now. I'm almost doing them daily, but not quite. Usually, at least 3 a week now, but sometimes more. You can listen or watch them on YouTube now. I'm recording them live, or you can listen to them at schiffradio.com or iTunes or any of these places that have podcasts. So people can follow me on social media. You can follow me on Twitter. I've been tweeting a lot recently, putting out a lot of important information. The only thing that's probably spreading quicker than the coronavirus is economic ignorance. The mainstream
right.
media is completely devoid of any understanding. So I'm trying to cure that with Twitter and my podcast. But, the most important thing that people can do if they want to avoid getting wiped out, which unfortunately most Americans will be wiped out by the inflation tax, if you don't want to be stuck with the bill for the bailouts and the stimulus and this depression that's coming, you need to get out of U.S. financial assets quickly and contact me or my representatives at Euro Pacific Capital. Europac.com is our website. Give us a call. You can transfer over retirement accounts, individual accounts. I mean, the quicker you can get out of U.S. bonds, U.S. stocks, and get into foreign stocks, gold stocks, the better. I don't even know how much time we have. It could be a matter of weeks, maybe months. I don't know, but I wouldn't want to press my luck. You want to get out of Dodge as quickly as you can. And I'm trying to help as many people as I can protect themselves. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about the country. We're in for a hell of a problem as a country. I wish I could do something about that, but I can't. But I can try to save as many Americans as I can in advance of this.
Well, you're absolutely right, Peter. In fact, your advice, people should really listen carefully to what you're saying, because I'm doing the exact same thing. My company, my whole operation, we've moved every last dollar out of the banks that we can, except what we need for cash flow and transaction capabilities. We're converting dollars into hard assets, temporarily using just short-term treasuries for the moment until we make other decisions for some of the things that you mentioned. So people really take this seriously. But Peter, I also want to tell you something that probably you don't hear enough and I don't hear enough. Those of us who have been right for decades, we don't hear it often enough. But Peter, you, sir, you are correct. You were right. You were right that a big event was going to come, an event that nobody else foresaw. You didn't know perhaps that it was going to be this virus, but you knew that there was something that could devastate the system, you know, a 20 sigma event that would come along, and it's here. So you were absolutely correct. People should listen to you, and thank you for your service of what you're doing to help people get squared away.
Right, but you know, what I've been predicting hasn't even really happened yet in its entirety. I mean, a lot of the things I've been forecasting have taken place. The key is not the coronavirus. We were unprepared for anything. You know, something is bound to go wrong, right? Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will. But the reason that this country is so ill-prepared for what's happening is because of all the debt. We had a debt bubble. And why did we have a debt bubble? Because the Federal Reserve refused to allow the economy to restructure every time it contracted, and so they levered us all up. They kept interest rates artificially low, and they kept businesses that should have failed in business, and they took on more debt because they weren't really viable enterprises. But instead of letting the free market restructure the economy so that we can have a recovery built on a solid foundation, we built a bubble on the foundation of debt. And that foundation has crashed. This house of cards that the Fed built instead of a viable economy is collapsing around it. And all it can do is try to blow more air into a deflating bubble. It's not going to work, right? This time, they're not going to be able to bail us out with a bigger bubble than the one that just popped. So this is the end game. All the years of kicking the can down the road, right? We finally caught up to the can, and there's no more road. And this can is too big. If we kick it, we break our foot. So this is the end game. And unfortunately, I used to think that hyperinflation was kind of a worst case scenario that I hoped we would avoid. Now I think it's the most likely scenario. I mean, it's not a done deal. I mean, it's still possible to avoid it, but I think the odds of that are very, very slim at this point, given where we are. I mean, everybody has pretty much drunk the Kool-Aid of socialism. You know, it's ironic. Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the race, probably because he figured there's no point in becoming president, because whoever wins, socialism is what we got.
Right. It's already here. The Fed has given us socialism. The response to the coronavirus has given us financial socialism. But you're right. I mean, we see this paycheck protection bailout program that's paying people to sit at home and collect essentially $15 an hour for sitting at home, and for companies to keep those people on the payroll, when companies should be rationally adapting or reducing their size in order to protect the other jobs in the same company. How do you survive if you can't adapt as a company and reduce your payroll, you know, to adapt to the times that are happening? I mean, aren't these bailouts in essence going to cripple the recovery?
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's going to be no recovery. Look, Ben Bernanke actually got something right, but not really. But when he was asked if this was going to be a depression, he said no, because he said the Great Depression was caused by a financial crisis and then policy errors by the government. Well, we've actually had a bigger financial crisis, and we're making even worse policy errors this time than we did then. Look, everything the government is doing is going to delay the recovery, and it's going to deepen the depression that we're entered into, because we need the free market to function, right? And when the free market functions, over-leveraged businesses fail, right? Businesses that no longer have adequate demand go out of business, and they free up their resources. They free up labor, which is a resource, to do something else. But what the government wants to do is maintain the status quo. They want to artificially keep businesses afloat that would sink in a free market. And so they have to redirect resources from where the market wants them to be to where the government wants to trap them. And therefore, all these businesses that are being bailed out today are going to need constant bailouts in the future. The people who are being subsidized not to work are going to have to be subsidized indefinitely, because the businesses that need to employ them are not going to be created because we're redirecting capital to maintaining the businesses that should be failing. I mean, it's like, what if when they invented the automobile, the government decided that we had to keep all the buggy whip manufacturers in business, right? Oh, we can't let these companies fail because their workers would lose their jobs. Well, we'd be subsidizing them to this day because who needs the buggy whips, right? But we're going to keep these businesses going. I mean, think about all of the restaurants that should be failing. And it's not just because of coronavirus. People are not going to have jobs. They're not going to be able to go out to restaurants. A lot of restaurants fail anyway. Now we're going to keep them all in business. I mean, a lot of people, even when we have a cure for the coronavirus, maybe, they're not going to be going out to eat as often. I mean, we have too many restaurants. We have too many stores. There's a lot of small retailers that were just barely hanging on. You know, they had all this debt. They were staying in business. The government kept crippling them with increasing the minimum wage. These businesses were going to fail anyway. What, now we're going to keep them in business? Now we're going to subsidize them by creating money? And you have a lot of big businesses that are over leveraged. You know, what we don't have enough in this country is manufacturing. We don't have enough production. We need resources to be reallocated there. We have too many service sector businesses that are being kept afloat by debt. And now the government wants to divert more resources into maintaining the bloated section of our economy and preventing an actual recovery from taking place.
Yeah, we've reached that point of reckoning. I like how you described it. We've kicked the can so far down the road. Now we've caught up to the can and we've run out of road. You can't keep reinflating it. We only have a little over a minute left, Peter, but what do you think the world is going to look like in the next year? I mean, in America, are people going to be paying $10 for a loaf of bread in a year? Is that possible? Or what do you think the economy is going to look like just a year from now?
It's hard to know the exact timetable, but I do think that prices are going to go way up. And I think not only are people going to be paying a lot more money for bread, but they're going to be waiting in long lines to get it. Because I think one of the things the government's going to do is impose price controls. I think they're going to say that, hey, people are price gouging. We're going to limit the ability to raise prices, which is going to create shortages, which means we're going to have to find another way to ration out goods. If we can't let the market do it through a price mechanism, then people are going to have to queue up and wait in long lines. Look, things are going to change dramatically in this country. I think we're headed for a collapse of the dollar. I think the dollar is going to lose its status as the reserve currency. I believe the world is going to go back to gold as the reserve, which is what the dollar replaced. It didn't replace the pound. It replaced gold. Gold historically has served as the monetary anchor for the global financial system. I think we're going back to gold. I think when that happens, the American standard of living is going to implode because we've been living beyond our means because the rest of the world has been enabling that by living beneath its means. But I do think that you're going to see a real economic boom outside the United States when they no longer have to support the American consumer and the American government.
Well, thank you, Peter. It's great to have you on. So the end of the free debt ride has approached for Americans. But tune in to Peter Schiff at his podcast and elsewhere to stay informed. He's got really good advice. Thank you for watching today. And thank you, Peter, for joining me. Mike Adams for The Alex Jones Show.